Not really spooky, but definitely paranormal. Every year in the autumn, anywhere between mid-September and early November, been taking a week off of work to go solo camping to clear my head and go off the grid. I'm a city guy and work in an office, so it's nice to get away from all the hustle and bustle and emails and phone calls. Not super hardcore outdoorsy type, but have learned enough over the years, plus some tips from friends, family, and other campers about some basic stuff, fire building, safety, etc. Go camping one mid-late September. Arrive bright and early, like 7 or 8 a.m. to set up. Unfamiliar area, but supposedly often camped. Find a nice small clearing with about a slightly winding quarter-mile path to a river so I can go fishing and cook what I catch. Set up my gear, tent, fire pit, etc. without trouble. Silence my phone to officially go off the grid and put it in with my essentials in the tent. I don't carry it with me because it'll be constantly blowing up with emails and normie book shit. I always air seal all my food stuff before I go so that it doesn't attract any animals, and put all my trash, food wrappers, containers, soda cans, fish bones, etc. in a bag hung away from the camp, so any bears that find their way around either don't fuck with it or do it away from my camp. I like bears, but I don't need a close encounter with a hungry and territorial one. Have a great time, get some fresh air, eat some good fire-cooked meals, and generally get away from it all. All in all, a great week, but starting to get ready to get back into the grind. Skip ahead to Thursday early afternoon, second to last full day before I leave. On my way back to the camp from the river. Had caught a pretty nice salmon and had it strung up and in a bucket with some water to bring it to camp. Hear clattering and rustling up ahead. Immediately think, fuck, a bear brought down the bag and is rummaging through it. Very slowly continue down the path, keeping my eyes and ears about me. From the bend, it's a straight shot to camp with the bear bag halfway between the bend and camp. Hear this constant clop sound, which I figure is the bear chewing at one of the disposable liquid containers I had some soup in. Hoping to fuck that this damn bear isn't on the path so I can just get to camp and wait for him to finish rummaging through. Turn the corner, prepared for the worst. Sure enough, right in the middle of the path, I see trash strewn about and am staring at the backside of a grizzly bear. I didn't even know grizzlies were in this area. I was just worried about black or brown bears. I freeze and back up a bit behind a tree, still watching in the hopes of this thing having his fill of fish bones and fucking off back to wherever he came from. It's far enough away that all I really see is bear butt, but it's still kind of neat seeing a bear for real. It's then I start noticing things. This bear's fur is very reddish, almost an orangey fox color or an Irish setter, that auburn kind of color. And that weird clopping sound still hasn't stopped. And that's when I drop the fucking bucket. Water splashes everywhere, and this goddamn fish on a string starts thrashing around in the bucket making a racket. Fuck. It immediately stops, stands up straight as bears do to get a good view, and looks straight up into the sky. My eyes go wide, and I just about piss myself. This isn't a fucking bear. This isn't a fucking bear at all. Where you'd normally find a bear neck and head is, well, a bird head. Like a fucking crow's head. Long black beak, beady black eyes, sleek feathers. In one motion, it turns its head to the side, gets down on all fours, and turns to face me head on. Get an even better look at this thing. Aside from the bird head, this thing mostly looks like a reddish grizzly until you get to the paws. It had hands. Like the stumpy but thumbed hands you'd find on an otter or raccoon, but with the grasping fingernails of a bird. It's looking at me, its head doing the twitchy, blinky movements that you'd expect from a bird, and clapping its beak. It slowly walks closer, almost cautiously. I'm paralyzed. This thing's maybe like 20 steps away from me. I come to my senses thinking, do I run and have it chase and kill me, or try to use my knife to fight the thing and have it kill me? This fucking fish continues flopping around. The creature looks at it, then looks at me, opens its beak, and lets out a short breck, like the combination of a dog bark and a light bird caw. I figure that this thing is hungry. I'll throw it the fish and book while it's eating it. Reach down slowly, grab the fish, and hurl it with the intent of going over it and into the woods so I can book back down the path once it turns around. This fucking thing bolts up on its hind legs, catches it with its beak, and continues staring at me, almost cautiously. Fuck. If I run now, it's gonna chase. That fish was my only hope. It sits down, but still upright, using its hand paws to hold, and the fish, while its beak stripped the bones of meat, the whole time still looking at me with those tiny black eyes. Picks the fish clean, puts the carcass down. Still staring at me, makes another bark/caw, and fucking bolts into the woods. Hear loud fucking cracking and snapping. This thing is probably knocking down saplings and breaking branches with that kind of bulk and speed. I fucking run back down the path towards the river. Sit at the riverbank, freaking the fuck out. Realize the sun will be setting soon, and I'm gonna have to spend the night. I haven't even collected any wood for a fire. I'm going to be in the woods, alone, in the dark, with some fucking monster roaming around and no way to get to my truck. Hustle back to camp. Hopefully I can just pick up some various twigs and dead branches from around the immediate area. Edge of the path just opening into the clearing and camp. There is a neatly stacked pile of branches, some of them from pretty big trees, some of them saplings themselves. I'm in full nope mode, but I'm not about to ignore all this free firewood during a crunch time. Start the fire. Sit in my tent, clutching my knife, guzzling soda and scarfing trail mix to stay awake, twitching at every rustle and chatter and owl hoot. At some point, I pass out sitting up. Morning, next day. Flies buzzing around me wakes me up with a jolt, damn near stabbed the air. Fire's mostly out, just some cinders. I spilled my soda while sleeping, and that's why the flies were buzzing around. Remember everything that happened. I'm getting out of here now, cutting this vacation short. Immediately douse what's left of the fire, pack everything up to head back to the truck. As I make it to the parking lot after a long hike, I hear a long, loud bark caw, as well as a bunch of normal, happy forest, sounds like birds and stuff. Somehow, even hearing that creature, I'm suddenly at ease. As I'm driving home, start to think about how things went down, how cautious that thing was, the way it ran after it ate the firewood. It repaid me for the fish that I gave it. I don't know what it was, some intelligent chimera creature or a forest spirit, but whatever it was a crazy experience.
Here's something that happened to me a couple of years ago, and it's probably the scariest in this thread because it's actually real. Be biology fag. Be Mexican. Doing field research in a forested area around some mountains by myself. Setting up some cameras and taking samples, all going smoothly. The woods are nice and warm. Hear voices. They get closer, sounds like a group of around 5 people. I see them in a small clearing about 30 meters away from me. I'll go say hi, maybe they're lost or something. Hold up, .jpg. Why are they all holding assault rifles, and why are they carrying some dude who could not really get up? Oh, fug.exe, hide under some bushes, could still sort of see the group of people. They began laughing and hitting the dude and asking him shit I couldn't make out. Try to stay calm, take out my phone, and think about calling the cops. Are you retarded? .rar decide to turn off phone instead and stay as still as possible. After I finish fumbling with my phone, I slowly look in the direction of the armed people. One of them had a machete. Heart was going to explode, whole body trembling with fear. Machete guy begins hacking at victim. The agony screams, I can still remember them. Decide to close my eyes and wait for silence. The armed men seem to disappear all of a sudden. After like a half hour, everything seems quiet. Look into clearing. They simply left the pieces of some man laying around. Too scared to move still. Sun is going down. Got a man up. Fuck it. Ran for like an hour straight to the place I left my car. Left a bunch of equipment in those mountains. Never returned. Fuck this country.
Up at camp, it's one of the many ponds off of Lake Ontario. Have a younger brother and a bunch of boy cousins. All of us are within 3 years of each other. Up at camp for a family reunion. Have 2 campsites up above, which was 2 blocks back from the water, and down below, which was on the shore. There's dense woods up above. All the grown-ups are down below. Me and cousins decided to go fart around in the woods. A big trail cuts through the woods out to the main road, and halfway up it we notice, for the first time, another, smaller, much harder to notice trail. Take the path less chosen. Come to a small clearing, sort of notice that there's boxes of ceramic plates everywhere. Naturally, we start whipping and tossing them at the nearest trees. We get bored and keep exploring. See an old, rotted-out car just up ahead. Then another as we get closer, and another, all clearly haven't moved in decades and are full of leaves and overgrown shit. In short order, we see an old, dilapidated house in front of us. These old cars are in its backyard. At first, we're all quiet and still. No one's moving or talking. We're just waiting to see. One of my younger cousins goes to look under one of the cars, and he claims he sees an old lumpy tarp, in that it looked like it was wrapped around something. We look under the other cars, and all of them had lumpy, rolled-up tarps under them. I go in for a closer look. I'm half under the car, and right when I touch the tarp and give it a shove, feeling something very heavy wrapped within, I can hear my older cousin, who had 3 months on me, inhale sharply and swear under his breath. He whispers my name, and I jump up and see that he is staring at the window next to the back door of the house. Only me and him see it. My brother nor the rest of our cousins heard him, so they're fucking about checking out the cars. There in the darkness of the windows we could see a pair of eyes and the silhouette of a face. The two of us are staring right at whatever it was, barely 10 feet away from us, separated by a pane of glass. The eyes blink and the face goes away. We both blurt out, "Oh fuck," in unison and take off running. My brother and the rest of our cousins fall in line. We sprinted the entire way back to camp. Big and tall, as I was for my age, I moved as fast as my slightly older cousin, who was much smaller and agile from growing up kicking a soccer ball around all the time. The whole quarter-mile back to down below, we ran like the wind. No one thought anything of us arriving suddenly and out of breath. Must have been some game. Later that night. It's mostly just us around the campfire. It's really late. Start telling ghost stories. We nearly scare the proverbial shit out of our younger brothers and cousins, because it wasn't until then that they finally thought to ask us why we started running. They tell us that before we had started to run, they had half-dragged one of the tarps out from under the car and had almost unrolled it when a powerful stink came over them and a dark sludge started to seep out of it.
All right, /X/I have a story for you, so sit a while and listen. This takes place 3 summers ago during a boar hunting trip, down in a very rural area of the Ozark South. My main reasoning for sharing this here is that, ultimately, I don't believe in the paranormal. However, I believe I may have ran across something that I couldn't explain, and I want some input. Fair warning, I'm no good at Greentext. However, I'm not going to assault you with a wall of text. In any case, enough pretense aside, be back from college and wanting to get out into the woods, be bored as fuck on a Friday night, and decide to head out super early for boar hunting with a buddy of mine, JD. JD is an Eagle Scout, not prone to being spooked very easily, and I have been hunting in places ranging from deep south swamps to Alaska. We pack our shit up and leave his place around 12:30 a.m., after stopping for energy drinks and beef jerky, every hunter's best friends. We end up getting out there at around 2:15 a.m. We'd hunted this area for boar many times in the daylight, seen tons of deer, squirrels, and even a baby fawn that fell asleep by the warmth of our car engine once. Basically, a nice place. We pull in off the gravel tract, 40 miles from town, and 3 miles from a podunk gas station/deer check station. Decide not to fuck about in the woods at night. We'd had a mountain lion walk in our tracks on a previous hunting trip. Roll down windows and try to take a short nap. Instantly, we're hit with this nasty, cloying, sickly sweet odor. I just brush it off going, just some wet deer. Ha. Should mean our scent won't travel far in heavy, damp air. JD just looks at me and says, "That smells like death, bro, like a cow that's been out in the sun too long." I launch into a diatribe about him being a gigantic pussy and how he should deal with it. In any case, Since we don't want either to be mucking about in woods home to mountain lions in the dead of night, or be accused of night hunting by some fat ranger, we decide to go check and see if the Podunk gas station is open. Surprise! JD's shitty old 4-banger won't start. Fine. Looks like it's a nap followed by hunting while we wait for some toothless mechanic to come jumpstart his car. All the while, this smell just seems to be seeping in through the vents and the cracks in the windows. It gets to the point where I'm actively retching in the car. Enough's enough, and we decide that if something had gone and died, we'd prefer not to be stuck in a gigantic tin can right beside the corpse. We get out of the car, parked in the middle of this gravel parking area, surrounded by tall grass on the north side and woods on all the others. A swamp was to our direct west, full of boar, deer, and critters. As I'm sitting there loading up the magazine to my rifle, JD just keeps scanning the tree line with his eyes. To the Europoors and Northerners, hunting in swamps is close quarters. We hunt boar with semi-automatic rifles in the south. You want a quick follow-up shot in case the 400-pound ball of muscle with 8-inch tusks decides to charge you from 25 to 30 yards out. Something's got his hackles all up, but I'm feeling fine, so I just dismiss it as fat. Anyway, suited up, we make our way down to the small footpath, 1-2 feet wide, that winds its way down into the swamp. However, reaching the tree line, we just both stopped, staring into the woods for a few minutes before either of us spoke. It was almost like shining a flashlight down a mine shaft, where the darkness sort of dissipated the light. I could feel my skin crawl, and something deep in the hindmost parts of my mind told me just to walk right back to the center of the clearing and wait for light. Nope. So, we do what any caveman would have done in that situation. We grunted out a few excuses to preserve our manhood and went and sat the fuck down by his car. Like fuck, I'm going to bumble through woods with mountain lions, weed growers, and God knows what else at 3:15, by that point, in the goddamn morning. The mood lightened, and the smell had seemed to recede a bit, so we just busied ourselves checking our rifles and talking about girls, politics, and history. We're a weird bunch. After a while, the smell started coming back, and we began to voice our concern that something that smelled fucking dead was moving around. As the smell starts growing more and more oppressive, I start hearing branches and twigs break in the undergrowth. Whatever it is, it's moving. I don't like that one bit. At this point, I'm thinking it's a mountain lion that's all covered in gore from a recent kill that's about to go full territorial mode. That wouldn't have been out of the question, but it wasn't. As I strained to hear where it was, I noticed that the snapping didn't come from the pat-pat-pat-pat of a four-legged animal. It resembled the crunch-crunch-crunch-crunch of a novice hunter picking his way through the undergrowth. My first thought was, we either had a ranger with a sick sense of humor, a drug grower with a great sense of humor, or worse, a motherfucking serial killer. Either way, weapons were shouldered, bolts closed on loaded chambers, and lights pointed towards where the sound was. Nothing. It's fucking nothing. Just the smell and a slower now. Crunch, crunch. And it stops. The smell is everywhere now, and whoever it is sitting far enough back in the tree line not to be silhouetted by our lights. Smart asshole. No eyeshine either, which ruled out just about any animal other than boar, which make enough noise to be easily noticeable. One again, the caveman brain rears up deep within my psyche and tells me, fire. A fire, you idiot. Build a fire. So what do? JD and I build a fucking fire. Throughout this whole affair, other than a few moments, we'd been mostly quiet. However, the fire gives us comfort, and whatever it is seems to back off into the forest, if only for a while. As the fire burns hot, we start joking again, having a decent time, convincing ourselves it was only a cougar. However, there's only so much timber in a gravel clearing, and after a while we'd have to venture out of the firelight to keep the fire going. That time came, and as the fire burned down to embers, the smell came back more oppressive than before. And with that smell came an almost oppressive feeling of fear. Not regular fear, but an intense guttural fear that made your muscles tense, your stomach turn, and your eyes go wide. Every fiber of our being told us to get more wood, to keep the fire high. Only with fire would we survive the night. So we cautiously walked to the closest tree line, barely able to see from the dying light of the fire. We'd been trying to save our flashlights. I was on guard duty, as we figured that my SETME .308 semi-automatic would be a better standoff weapon than JD's small carbine. I'm tacticaling the fuck out at this point, adrenaline flowing from a profound feeling that something just isn't right. JD leans down into the undergrowth to pick up a stick, reaching into the tree line. He screams and falls backwards, while branches break right in front of him. He gets up, freaking out, dusting himself off, saying he saw something staring at him first. Sunken eyes, a thick brow ridge, ashy gray skin. Then it smiled at him. Not so much as smiled, but curled back its lips in a Cheshire grin. We are at NopeCon 1, gentlemen. I'm going to ignore the next hour of this hopscotch game of the fire dying, the smell growing more intense, him, as we call it now, drawing nearer, building the fire back up, and him retreating back to stay away from the firelight. However, it should be noted that this entire time he was circling us, probing our defenses, seeing if it could find a way to get up close without being seen. By the time 5 a.m. rolled around, we'd exhausted almost all of the dry firewood that wasn't within the tree line, except for the tall grass on the northeast side of the road. We, of course, do what we have to do and slowly pick our way over to the tall grass. By this point, I have taped a flashlight to my rifle and switch it on as we leave the fire to get some dry grass. As JD is filling his hands with tinder, I check my right-hand side and look down the road. I wish I hadn't. Just as I swing my flashlight over the road, I see him for the first time. It's grayish-black with either sloughing skin or matted gray fur. I honestly couldn't tell. It crossed the 10-yard-wide track what seemed like instantly. Hunched over, maybe 5.5 to 6 feet tall, moving like a gorilla does. It's over. Something in my head just starts screaming, it's over. It knows you've seen it. It's not just being territorial. It's circling like a predator. It is a predator. That feeling hadn't been one of fear, but of impending predation. Somehow the lower parts of our subconscious had known what was going on long before we did. In any case, we ran back to the fire, popped the dry grass on top, and waited for the smell to recede. It didn't. It was close, very close, and this time it wasn't moving. So we pushed out and got in the trunk of JD's car and listened as it passed behind the front of his car back into the trees. Any burst of brilliance, I decide that we either make the 3-mile run through dark countryside to the gas station and pray the lights are on, or we build a fire big enough that one of the farmers or someone driving the main road can see it. We end up deciding that sprinting 3 miles through dark countryside, guns on our backs, could at the worst get us devoured by him or shot by a terrified farmer. So we do the next best thing. I pull a fucking small tree out of the ground. I'm not talking about a bush, I'm talking a small 8 to 9 foot tree. It's amazing what adrenaline can do for you. So much adrenaline where your facial muscles are drawn tight and your eyes dilate to being nearly black. JD's description of my face. In any case, the fire burns bright, very bright, after a while, and he retreats further into the woods. This fucking tree burned a long-ass time. Eventually, maybe 30 minutes after throwing the tree on the fire, 3 lifted trucks come barreling down the road and fly into the gravel parking area. The first truck had an obscene amount of those off-road lights on the bull bar and roof, which lit up the whole glade like the fucking sun. The smell almost goes away entirely, still there, but almost imperceptible. No one gets out of the first truck. A man wearing a National Guard t-shirt and AQ pants hops out of the second truck with his hand on his hip, concealed pistol. He questions us for about 10 minutes, makes us disarm, clear our chambers, and set our rifles in JD's car. He tells us there's a burn ban, we shouldn't be out here fucking around, etc., etc. We explain our car died when we came out hunting and made that as a signal fire. He just looks at us strangely, at the word hunting, walks back to truck number 1, comes back, tells us not to come back there unless we have all of our ducks in a row. Truck 3 drives over, and a man hops out to jump-start our car. I shake his hand and thank him profusely, and he gives me a worried but sympathetic look. He doesn't say much, but walks back to his truck and drives away. Truck 2 drives away shortly thereafter. We've got all of our shit packed up. Truck 1's window rolls down, and a rather fat man in a polo calls me and JD over. "There's no boar here, boys. If you're hunting for boar, you best be looking further on down the road. At least on the other end of County Redacted. Bullshit, tons of boar in there. But I don't say that. I'm not going to mouth off to the hillbilly militia that just saved my life." So I thank him for his advice. JD and I get back in his car, debating whether he had gone away with all the commotion. Just as soon as Fatty McLightbar had pulled out, the smell returned yet again. Nope, we're out. Hop on the gravel road, drive to the highway, drive past a few farms, and make our way towards the western border of County Redacted. We notice we're being followed by a small white Honda. Guess who's sitting in the front seats? Fatty McLightbar and hillbilly militiamen. They follow us all the way out of that county, then turn around. So ends my experience. It's hard to get Greentext to express emotion, the exact description of the smell, or the fucking primal fear we felt. I wrote an after-action report of sorts the morning after that hunt, but haven't been able to find it after I moved. Hence the Greentext. In any case, I've debated going back with more than 2 people.